Fargo, North Dakota. I'm Matt Hoskin with Carrie. Carrie Dick, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful. So we are here today to talk about selling cottage deposit plans, and Carrie and her team recently had some situations come up and were able to kind of come through some difficulties on selling cottages. So why don't you kind of tell us what happened and how that went?
Yeah, well, we had a number of cottages that had come open over probably a 6 to 12 month period, and we were having a lot of events, we were getting a lot of traffic in, but we just weren't moving the cottages. And so last December, I think it was, we had a conference call with Tammy and Tucker, and they were very helpful. But we decided to take a completely different approach to how we were selling the cottages. And since then have sold probably 8 or 9 cottages and don't have any available.
Wow, that's fantastic. So what was this different approach?
Prior to this, we had taken kind of the older approach where we were really comparing kind of an outright rental for a cottage with a cottage deposit that was more similar to a sale. So it was just a more complex explanation, and I think a lot of the time people kind of got confused and maybe even a little bit wary of what the plan entailed. And so when we switched to just describing it as really 2 rentals, one with a deposit that reduced the rental amount and just an outright rental, that simplified the process and made all the difference.
So 2 rentals. Explain that just a little bit more, what you mean by that. So that they're both basically rental options, and one you buy down and the other you don't. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep. We start out with just the simple explanation that all of our cottages are rental options. With one, you pay a higher amount, and with the other, you put down a deposit, and that buys down your monthly rent. We don't have a preference in terms of which plan fits the prospect best, so we really leave it up to them to decide. But it also works really well, and we found this with people who were looking at an apartment in the main building and a rental option there. The cottage deposit plan became a great option for them to pay less on their monthly rent and get an entire home to themselves.
So just the fact that a cottage home may be a more desirable end product than an apartment to some people.
For the right prospect, the cottage can be a great option, especially if they plan to be there for at least a couple years. And so for the right prospects, they came in maybe thinking that they were considering a rental, and then the more we talked about it after we looked at rental options in the main building, a deposit home made a lot of sense for a lot of those residents.
So has it changed anything as far as the kind of what the traditional cottage prospects were from before? The folks that maybe we were trying to sell them the home versus work through the deposit plan?
Good question. I think that we found that a lot of prospects in the past, and some of these prospects we'd worked with for a long time, really were getting caught up on the financial aspect of the cottage. And for many of them, they were comparing a condo and the association fees that might go with a condo with the monthly fees that were on our cottages. And if that's what you're comparing, it's really not a good comparison. We really had to find people that really wanted community living and saw the benefits and Touchmark in the community. And so that ruled out a few prospects, but I think the prospects that we found ourselves working with were ones that were really interested in community living and saw value in that part of what Touchmark offers.
So more focused on community living, less on sort of the cottage or a single family home condo type of situation, those type of people.
Right, yeah. And I think a lot of them came in already because they already saw the value, and for some of them, they were willing to pay that for the main building. We weren't spending a lot of time trying to justify the pricing. And that makes selling the cottages a lot easier.
Yeah, very good. So while we're on this subject, some of our communities have a apartments that are also deposit plan, apartment style homes. You don't have any here at Fargo.
We don't.
But based upon your experience, how would you kind of extrapolate your experience to those who are selling apartment style, homes, deposit homes versus rental?
Well, I think it's important when you're dealing with prospects to know if they know that we don't have a preference between the two, and it's really up to them to decide what option fits them best. The same thing that has worked for our cottages can work for apartments. Explain both options, explain the benefits of both options and why it might work better for one person versus the other, and then it's up to them to decide what the best fit is.
Even if that's really a different home, even if that home that they're really interested in is a deposit only home, that we basically say we don't really, it doesn't matter to us whether you pick a rental or a deposit home, but you might have to pick a different one if it's a rental. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes the inventory limits the options, and in our case, we really didn't have any outright rentals available for cottages anymore. So deposit cottages were what we were working with too. But when people were comparing that to renting in the main building, the cottage made sense for a lot of those prospective residents.
And I think that's probably the primary takeaway from this is a comparison versus the main building versus rental homes. Then that deposit plan in a cottage environment makes a lot more sense. Correct?
Definitely.
Any other takeaways for us from that?
No, I think though, what we found is when we started with this idea that both cottage plans are a rental option, it just made the whole process of explaining cottages a lot simpler. And we weren't trying to kind of justify or explain, how it was like a sale. We were just providing the information and letting them decide. It made the whole process much easier.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carrie,
Thank
our
you.
latest armchair expert. And thank you, everyone, and have a great day.